there is a huge demand for Chinese books. However, there is a piece of history in Indonesia, and during 30 years in Indonesia's history, Chinese is a forbidden language. That's why the new generation of Indonesia young people cannot speak Chinese. And so there are very few readers of the Chinese language. Therefore, the opening of this bookstore take place at the backdrop of the Belt and Road, and a lot of Chinese factories setting their branches and starting their business in Indonesia. So this kind of bookstores are a great help to those Chinese communities who want to learn Chinese living in Indonesia. And also it's very convenient for the business, the Chinese business that are doing their job in India. And this is the owner of this bookstore, Mr. Wang Lin. Your bookstore has operating for some time. So what have you learned from this period of time? Our store opened last year, and we felt great pressure, to be honest. And there are a lot of difficulties when it especially when it comes to the revenue of the bookstore. I heard that you are not only not making money, but also losing money. Is that true? That is true. But right now there is a Chinese become very popular in Indonesia, and Chinese teaching is become bigger and bigger. And also we have the Maritime Silk Road as a golden opportunity for us. And the Indonesian book readers are becoming more and more interested in Chinese culture. That's why I think that in the future, the running of the bookstore will be better and better. Do you think that all of your readers understand Chinese? Sometimes we go to the Chinese teaching schools to do some promotion of the books. Most of the books are imported from China. When we go there, the parents and the students were very enthusiastic. However, the sales turned out not to be so ideal. And to answer that question, we talked to the parents and talked to the school leaders. We found that although they love Chinese, they love the Chinese culture, but they are not quite literate when it comes to the Chinese language. And in order to address this issue, we talked to the headquarters and started translating some books into Indonesia language. And we start with some picture books, which are warmly welcomed here. And also, some of them are in both Chinese and Indonesian. So your strategy is to first educate and improve the language ability of the local residents. But I believe that this fever of learning Chinese is becoming more and more popular. And we have a special guest here. This is Mr. Cai Changjie, the head of a Chinese teaching institution here in Jakarta. Our association was established in 2000, and this year marks the 18th anniversary of our institution. So you must have witnessed a faithful witness to this trend of learning Chinese. So how many Indonesian people are actually learning Chinese to this day? We work with the Ministry of Education here in Indonesia to promote Chinese learning. In 2001, the Ministry of Education from both countries started to organize Chinese language tests here in Indonesia in order to promote Chinese language learning. Last year, in 2017, more than 15,000 people participated in this language skill test. So it's not just the Chinese Indian, but also from other ethnic groups. And we saw a 20% growth in the number of people taking this test. So it's my great honor and it's my great pleasure to be present today to come to this bookstore. Hopefully our institution can work with this bookstore and jointly promote Chinese language learning activities here in Indonesia. Do you think that these books are useful? Yes, I believe that especially when it comes to textbooks like HSK I'm holding right now, is very useful to promote language teaching in schools. And the exam that I mentioned is an important evaluation to see if to test the learning result as well as educational quality of language teaching. And I believe there will be an important platform. I believe that only part of people take this kind of exam, but there are still some people who did not take this exam. But so you only mentioned the number of people who take the exam. So according to your estimation, how many people actually are learning Chinese? Yeah, I think there is only a small percentage of people who are taking exam. If you want to do a counting of the people who are actually learning Chinese, I believe there will be 3 or 4 times higher. So there are many activities and campaigns to boost people's interest towards Chinese. So what is your understanding of this so-called Chinese fever? I think the comprehensive power, national power of China is becoming stronger and stronger, and the international status of China is also rising. And Indonesia is an important country along the maritime Silk Road. Therefore, in the future, it is expected that more and more Chinese enterprises and business will come to Indonesia to do exchanges, to do business, to expand their market here. I believe that we in the future will further work with partners like this bookstore to further promote this fever, this so-called fever of learning Chinese. Currently, we have examinations are carried out in 17 provinces in Indonesia. And as China entered this new development stage, it will surely work with all locations in India to promote Chinese learning nationwide. also promote the effort of Belt and Road. Mr. Tai mentioned that besides the local residents, there are some Chinese enterprises who set their branches or factories here in Indonesia. As I understand, there are more than 1,000 factories, including 40,000 Chinese staff here. So are these staff members your potential clients? Yes, of course. Because reading habit is important in both China and Indonesia. If we have bookstores like this, it will be beneficial for and also more convenient for the Chinese staff members to do reading. I think this bookstore is quite special. Beside the books on the shelves, we can see some traditional Chinese handicrafts, such as the bamboo slips. People seldom use these nowadays, so are they more like gifts? Yeah, I think this is more than a bookstore. It's also a gift shop or a cultural promotion center showing some the intangible cultural heritage and Chinese culture and Chinese handicrafts. The bamboo slip is a carrier of the traditional Chinese culture. That's why we put it here. So the so-called Chinese fever is not only about language, but Chinese culture as a whole. So beside the language, we also have calligraphy, paintings. Let's take a look at this, take a walk at the store. We also have the folding fans, the traditional folding fans. Indonesia also has its own folding fans. And so you can do some kind of comparative study of the fans of the both countries. Here is a traditional Chinese abacus. These are also rarely used nowadays, but it's an important part of the Chinese culture. It is also an intangible cultural heritage. In Indonesia, there are actually classes about the operation of abacus. Do you think anyone would be interested in that kind of courses? I think so. So are these classes for free? Yes, we teach them for free here.
We could see so many Chinese elements here in the bookstore. For example, the paper cuts. During the traditional Chinese festival, like the Spring Festival, we will see so many of those paper cuts. And some of them has been decorated. And that's the Chinese knots. It feels like we're during the Spring Festival already seeing those decorations. Are there many people buying those and decorate them in their homes? Actually, a lot of them do, in particular the Chinese nationals living here in Indonesia. They really love to buy this and carry on their Chinese tradition. If you don't open such a store, it must be very hard for them to get access to those objects. Exactly, we're offering them such a place to buy them. In addition to the things like Chinese knots, I have also noticed some musical instruments. Why are you exhibiting the musical instruments here? The Indonesians might not know any Chinese characters, but the musical instruments do not have a national boundary. If we have some tutors teaching those foreigners those musical instruments, it's very easy for them to have some understanding about music. Yes, arts do not have boundaries. And all of those instruments we chose are representative. Most of them are intangible Chinese cultural heritage. Today we have invited a music expert. He's the headmaster of a school in Jakarta. His name is Zhang Yi. And I used to interview him before. According to my knowledge, he is capable of playing almost all of those traditional Chinese musical instruments. So, Professor Wu, speaking of the Chinese fever, do you think it brings another fever about the Chinese culture? Exactly. Among Chinese culture, the Chinese language is the basis. Without that, all of the other cultural formats could not make their presence in the foreign land. In 2000, I noticed that the foreigners may not even have passed the examination of the Chinese language, let alone the Chinese culture. And then in 2006, another look at this land, I noticed that there are so many training courses of Chinese language. By that it means the Chinese culture has entered this foreign land. What are your students? At what age are those students? We have two groups of foreign students. The first group is primary school students. The other group is the elderly people, like at 60 or 80. Have they expressed their reason for attending such classes? Due to the historical or political reasons in the past, their ancestors, like fathers or grandparents, have heard about some Chinese culture, and such story have been passed down to the later generations. They found it very interesting to listen to the Chinese traditional music. So now with the Chinese teacher coming to their doorsteps, they are more than happy to take the courses. For some, they don't even speak Chinese. They're still willing to take your courses, right? Yes, most of these youngsters cannot speak Chinese. Even among the Chinese nationals, let alone the Indonesians, but they still favor the courses in the music. I heard that one of those poor Indonesian students could not afford the tuition and he left. Yes, then we contacted him. He said that if it's because of the tuition, I can offer you courses for free for you to learn some musical instruments from China. Now it's almost as a spring festival time, and many shopping malls would be happy to invite us for more music performances in their shopping malls. And these students might train for several times in order to stand on the stage for more performances. Even though some Chinese nationals living overseas could not speak Chinese anymore, we can use the musical instrument to incite their interest in Chinese. Mr. Wu, do you think it's possible for we to have a taste of your music? All right, I will play one of them. It's quite a simple musical instrument. It's a flute. For the people learning Chinese musical instruments, what are their favorites? For example, erhu and guzheng, which are both the stringed musical instruments. If they have some emotions, erhu will be the perfect choice for them to express the deep emotions. For the stringed plucked instrument called guzheng, it's very easy to start learning. What is this? This is the Chinese flute. Such a flute is a very important instrument among all of those instruments. Many students Thank you, Mr. Wu. I think the flute is not fully adjusted. Yes, next time you may present an even better performance. Manager Wang, I noticed that the books are mostly exhibited in the second floor. Let's take a look. Could you give us a brief introduction about the different categories of the books? We have social science, education, and arts and literature. I heard that you have 600 square meters in size. Yes. And the total number of books is about 30,000. What are the most popular books sold? That is the bilingual language in Indonesian and Chinese. And the books about learning Chinese, also in bilingual languages. For example, Experiencing Chinese, Modern Chinese, those several books are most popular. So it is closely related with the Chinese fever. Exactly, the sales is having something to do with the Chinese fever. Could you point at some of the most popular books? For Indonesians, even though they know nothing about Chinese, they're still buying those books. For example, about tourism in China. Those books about tourism is really popular. If they want to go to China, they would first-hand know something about Chinese culture, customs through those books. And I see that those books are written by the locals in Indonesia. Yes. And those books have been published locally and also in bilingual languages. Those books must be very important reference books. Yes. For example, the Indonesia social and cultural environment, or the Indonesian Chinese nationals during the reform period. Those books are popular for us to know something about Indonesia as well. What's your name? I am Mr. Guo. Are you a frequent visitor to this bookstore? During the weekends, I usually come here. Why do you want to come frequently to the bookstore? I think books shall be the basis for mankind to make progress. Do you like to read Chinese books? Because I received Chinese education for years. So now you're buying Chinese books. Do you think it's still difficult for you to understand all of it? I really want to learn the most important things about those books. And usually I will buy a lot of them based on my financial backgrounds. And Manager Wang, I heard that for some period you want to promote the sales and you have some discount. In the beginning, there was very few people coming here to buy books, but with the discount campaign, a lot of the visitors come here. What does it mean? It means that the prices of the books used to be very high, and we have neglected the purchasing power of the Indonesians. When we discovered the loopholes, we have introduced such a discount promotion activity, and their purchasing will has been stimulated with those activities. Some of the Chinese nationals buy 2,000 or 3,000 books for once, and then we will call them some other time if we have introduced some new books. So it means that even though in the beginning there was very few people and visitors and buyers, but it later showed that we have high potential of Chinese book sales. Yes, I think in the market we have high potential. Now I will look around a little bit more. What are those books? Those books about philosophies and traditional Chinese philosophies and culture and literature. These books must be oriented to the buyers with some Chinese backgrounds, right? If they have some research already of the Chinese culture, it's much easier. And those are the instruments for Chinese calligraphy. And you even have prepared table here just for our visitors to have some exercise of calligraphy. This serves like a platform for them to enjoy themselves. And if they have finished their writing, we can help them to decorate this writing. Do you come here a lot? Yes. What's your name? I'm Mr. Ye. How long have you been practicing calligraphy? Since very young in primary school. I've practiced it for 60 years because I'm in my 70s. Why do you want to come here for practicing your calligraphy? Since my childhood, I've been learning the Chinese culture. And that's why I would love to read some Chinese literature. And as to calligraphy, since I've learned it for 60 years, and I believe that calligraphy is a platform for we to access the international arts. So I keep writing calligraphy every day. Chinese calligraphy is a great invention. And after China emerges in the international stage, we shall carry on the cultural development. That's my dream as well. But many Chinese youngsters do not know calligraphy anymore. Yes, that's because in the past we have some weakness. That's why we have neglected calligraphy teaching in our education. Actually, calligraphy is not just arts, it's also related with philosophies. So I hope that the Chinese government could keep supporting the calligraphy sector so that we can transmit calligraphy as an important part of Chinese arts. Could you write several characters as an example? Okay. Manager Wang, I've been wondering that for some people practicing the calligraphy, they're not just looking for a place with very good atmosphere. Perhaps he's coming here also to showcase the youngsters coming to the bookstores that calligraphy is a part of Chinese culture. Exactly. This old man's enthusiasm for calligraphy is very noticeable. Whenever he has time, he would come here to write something. For intangible Chinese cultural relics like painting, music, and calligraphy, they're more direct expression of Chinese arts and literature. Even though you know nothing about Chinese characters, you will still feel the beauty in it. Yes, you can feel the charm of those characters.
So, does this gentleman come here very often? Yes. Is it possible to hire him to be your consultant or something? Yeah, I think in the future we can host some activities of calligraphy so that readers can have a closer talk with him. This is a Chinese stream in the Chinese language. So, what is your understanding of the Chinese dream? My father and I hope that China will become stronger because as Chinese nationals, we suffered a lot in the past. So we share the same dream, hoping that China will become stronger by the day and will be a strong support and backup for us Chinese nationals overseas. Our live broadcast is about to conclude, and hopefully you can now understand why we conduct this live broadcast in this bookstore. And the Belt and Road Initiative, culture, communication, and exchange comes first. And that's why we attach such importance to cultural communication, and that's why we did the broadcast today in this bookstore. Hopefully through our program you can better understand how Chinese culture is spread overseas and what the future will be like. That will be all for today's live broadcast. Thank you. Thank you for watching.